Well, hello everybody. I'm
Hello.
Katie Friedman and welcome to today's live streamed event where I'm really excited to be joined by our partner Shell UK. Just a quick note as we begin that we've kept video and interaction off for this meeting because we are recording it and we're going to be sharing it more widely. So we wanted to ensure that it allows everyone to watch and learn without being screened and video screened and named. So you might be watching this live, or you may know many of you will be watching on catch up. So welcome to anyone watching on catch up. So I'm going to introduce our speakers to you in a minute. I just wanted to say that today I'm really excited about this session because it's a really key area, particularly for parents, working parents who need to manage family life and careers. And one of the reasons that we partnered with Shell UK is because their policies around flexible working and looking after their people is really prevalent and part of the core of their makeup. And the more and more people that I meet from Shell and have conversations with, the more I realise that it's in the DNA of their business. And a few weeks ago, I did an event with one of our legal partners, with Sherwood, about maternity leave specifically. But today's session is more around parental leave and what that looks like. And some companies get parental leave really right, others don't get it so right. But when it goes right and it works, it can be really powerful as a tool, both to retain existing people in their business, to drive loyalty, just to look after basically their people. And so when I was talking to Shell about, the sessions and what we'd be doing, I realized quite quickly that, one of the parental leave is something they're really passionate about. It's not just something that's a policy, it's something that they really live and breathe at Shell. And so today we brought two real examples of people who work with Shell UK, where these policies have impacted them beyond just work in their families and their life, and has made an enormous difference to the early stages of their children's lives and to them as parents, and ultimately really help them to show up to work as in a more authentic way. And I think that that's exactly what having good paternity, maternity, parental leave does. It helps you to be authentic and to show up authentically at work. So when we talk about exploring what parental leave looks like when it's backed by culture, not just policy, that's a really, really core point here. That's sort of the underlying pin to all of this and how it can make a massive difference to the lives of working parents. Um, so I'm really excited to have be joined here today by Natasha and by Claudiu. Natasha Dallyn is resourcing lead in operational excellence at Shell, and she manages projects and strategy and talent attraction across the organisation. And Natasha is based in London. So welcome, Natasha.
Thank you.
And also welcome to you, Claudia. It's great to have a dad as well be represented here. We talk a lot about maternity leave, but paternity and fathers being involved in the early stages of their childhood is just as important. And it's great to have you here. Claudio is the regional lead for campus hiring, responsible for early careers resourcing across the region, also based in London. And they'll be sharing their personal experiences of taking parental leaves, how their teams responded, what it meant to their families, and sort of the longer term impact. So we hope this session sparks ideas, inspiration, and whether you're here because you're shaping policy in your own organisation or thinking about how you can support working parents, or if you are a parent and you are thinking about parental leave yourself and what it means and thinking about companies that you want to work with and how your company supports you, then we hope this session really helps. So I'm going to start just by, you introducing yourselves, maybe briefly just talk about your family dynamic. Natasha, Claudia, you're both parents. Just tell us, Natasha, you start about your sort of experience and your parental leave journey at Shell.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me to be here today. Really, it's the topic that I feel really strongly about. I'm really passionate about, so really happy to be here to talk about it. I have been fortunate enough to have two children whilst I've been at Shell. I joined about 6 years ago, and so I've taken two maternity leaves in that time. My daughter was born during the pandemic. So I was pregnant during that time, a very strange time to be pregnant and having a baby, and took my first maternity leave then, rejoined after taking a year of my maternity leave, and then had my son Jude 3 years later. And I'm just recently back from that maternity leave. I came back after 9 months in March of this year. So yeah, I live sort of just outside London with my husband and my 2 children, and I'm back at work full time now.
Brilliant, thank you. And Claudia?
Also, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, as a dad, you don't often think about parental leave, and I was pleasantly surprised by Shell's policy and culture when the time came. And I've got a 1.5-year daughter. It's our first and only child at the moment, and yeah, so I've taken the sort of 2 weeks of paternity leave right at the beginning when my wife gave birth, and extended it further with some annual leave. And then I've taken an additional 10 weeks, which has been part of the generous package that the Shell gives to dads, but also partners, in general. And that additional 10 weeks has made probably the biggest difference, because I was able to have the flexibility to take it at the end of my wife's maternity leave, which meant that we could extend the time we spent with our daughter, and also help her transition back into work and relieve some of the stress that I now become a lot more aware of how it feels for a mother to go back into work after first time taking time off and going on maternity leave, and everything that goes around with it. So I feel that the policy itself hasn't just helped me as a dad, it also helped my wife indirectly in a way. And it's had a very profound effect on our relationship and how we feel about Shell, both of us.
Exactly. Okay, well that's great. We've sort of covered quite a lot in those intros. But did you know about policy at Shell when you joined? Were you told about it? How did you discover it? Was it when you came to the point where you needed to think about it? It'd be good to understand that part as well. How did you want to start as you're already in flow?
I wasn't aware of Shell's policies when I started. I started off as a graduate, and when you're early in your career, you just don't even things like this don't really cross your mind. What I would say is, for the first few years, I've also kind of taken for granted Shell's culture around flexible working and overall how inclusive we are to everyone. It became a lot more visible for me once I started to become a parent, and seeing how the leaders reacted to the news of me having a baby, and how excited they were for me to take time off. And that was a very pleasant surprise, but I wasn't really deep into the policy. I wasn't really aware of the benefits that Shell offers. But I was pleasantly surprised to see not just the policy itself, but also the culture that supports it.
Great. And Natasha, for you, was it something that you were aware of or something that you discovered?
Yeah, so kind of the opposite for me, really, in that it was something that I looked at before joining the company. So in my previous role, I was in a small marketing agency. I had reached a point where I started to think about having a family and how that would work. And it was only statutory maternity pay that was on offer from the company that I worked at the time, which was pretty standard in that industry. And I was just really struggling to see how we were going to sort of make that work. And so started looking for a new role. And part of that search involved finding a company that would have benefits that would support me, starting a family at the same time as, how that would benefit my career. Although it wasn't something that I wanted to do immediately. And I did, it was a few years of working here before that was something that became a reality. But maternity benefits were a really important part of my job search. Because I knew it was going to have such a big factor on our lives when we would start a family. not just because of the financial benefits, but also just in terms of how serious the company takes that time, how seriously they see it, that it's not an inconvenience, it's part of life and it's part of what you're doing. So I sought out the benefits and the enhanced package that was available here, which is on maternity leave, 26 weeks at full pay, was a huge part of my reason for wanting to accept the job offer when I received it. So yeah, I sought it out, and it's one of the things that played a part in my decision to the company.
That's really interesting, actually, because I think that you've both had quite different experiences there. So, Claudia, you've said you didn't know and you got to the point, and that's quite usual. I think most people do go through their careers and get to that point, and then suddenly they you have to start thinking about it. But for you to make an active decision to join a company based on their, parental leave, is quite fundamental. And I think that we talk about that, and I talk about companies having these benefits and it being important, but actually that was the crux of a decision you made to join a company. So actually, companies thinking about these benefits, actually can impact their hiring potential in terms of attracting new hires, not just about driving loyalty and retention. And I think we talk about it, but you're kind of walking and talking, telling us that that's what you look for. So that's really interesting. I also think we're talking about the culture and the policy, and I think we talked about this in sort of the pre-meet, but how do you think Shell managed to do this across the business culturally? Is it sort of led from top down? Because, sometimes in large organizations, this can exist in pockets, but it feels like at Shell, this is something that is just part of the DNA because they have an inclusive culture. Is that how you feel?
Yeah.
Claudio, do you want to take that?
I actually was thinking about this particular topic. How did we get to this culture? I don't have the full history of when Shell started to be a very sort of inclusive on flexible working, because from the moment I've been here, I feel like that culture was already in place. But what I can draw maybe sort of insights from is seeing the exact opposite. For example, whether it's some of the experience that my wife has had to deal with, or other people that I know, where their companies don't have the same culture, and have seen comments such as, some of the senior leaders in the organization, not in Shell, just to be very clear, other organizations, saying things, well, I had to go to work 5 days a week and I had 2 kids. And therefore, the meaning that they were assigned to that was, so should you. So you should figure it out because you now have a little bit more flexibility. You only have to come in 4 days a week, for example. And I feel that what would have created the culture that we currently see at Shell is that those leaders at Shell, what they've decided to do is to say, I've had it tough. I want to make it easy for the next generation. And therefore, here are the policies and the business case of why I want to make this happen. The impact then that those decisions that I believe that the leaders would have taken to create the culture had impact on people being able to show up authentically at work and not hide their challenges at home, and therefore feel a stronger sense of trust in the company, that you are not eyeing the door at the same time. So you feel really strong, committed part on your side to stay with the company. And then in itself, you're already making a return on investment on any sort of policies that you will then put in place, because you are trusting your employees and you're willing to adapt the policies to best benefit them.
Exactly. And Natasha?
Yeah, I mean, I can, speak only from my own personal experience. We're a huge company in the UK. But I see that this, as Claudio says, this inclusive culture, it's top down, and it also was well in place before I joined. So it's all I've ever experienced here. You certainly experience it differently though when I suppose you feel as though you need it more. So being pregnant and then also taking that maternity leave. We've got the policies that underpin all of these things, which is really important to have those policies in place so that there is consistency across the business. But it just sort of underpins then the behaviour that we see coming through from our leaders, which comes through in the trust, and it isn't a case of, oh, you know, I've got this policy in place, I suppose we better adhere to it and give you the flexibility that you need. It's, you know, it's there to sort of support them in their own decisions, which is that they want to sort of enable you to kind of have this life. And we know that there's huge amounts of research and, oh, sorry, the lights in here have just gone off 2 seconds. Apologies. You know, we know that there's all of these sort of business reasons to give people flexibility and to make it accessible for parents and things to do their job properly. But on top of that, you know, we're all people, we're all humans, and we've got families, and the same for our leaders. And that's all I've ever really felt when I've been going through these things, is that it's just kind of real. It's real life, and you know, work is important, the work we do is important, but so is your family and so is your life, and there's trust that you know, where you need to take that time to make it work, that you can, and you do.
Brilliant. Okay, so it sounds like it was all very supportive on the way out. I'm quite interested now to sort of touch on the way back in, because I think that that's another really key area when you take extended parental leave or any type of leave and come out of a company. What that looks like when you come back in. There's often a lack of confidence, a feeling like you're disconnected. How did that feel for both of you coming back in after that sort of extended, enhanced leave? And did you feel supported in that? What do you want to just talk about what that looked like, Natasha?
Yeah, so going from so both times, you know, we have the keep in touch days and all of those sorts of things that kind of make that sort of transition a bit easier. What was encouraged for me, because it worked for me coming back both times, was to, you know, ease back in. It wasn't sort of right straight back in, you're off you go, you know, pick up where you left off. Easing back in terms of hours, in terms of workload. It was, you know, welcomed back in, very much so, supported back in from my manager and from my teams. Again, there's policies to back this up, offered professional coaching as part of that return to work setup, which has been really helpful. But more than that, just coming back into the team and feeling welcomed back was really important, and not having to sort of pretend that I hadn't just had children and that they weren't still a huge part of my life. You know, I came back this time around after 9 months out of choice. That was my decision to do that. And, you know, at the time, my son wasn't really sleeping. And obviously that has an impact in how I'm able to turn up to work. And I was, you know, I've come back into a culture where I feel comfortable enough to say, I had 2 hours of sleep last night. I'm going to do my best, the best that I've got today, but that's with 2 hours of sleep, and that's fine. That's you know, that's kind of acknowledged, accepted, supported. Even, you know, do you need to go and what do you need to get through? And I think that acknowledgement that I'm coming back to work, not having just had a 9 or 12-month holiday, that I've had children in that time. Those children still exist. Those children are still babies at that time. That has an impact, and that's fine. It was set up for me in a way that I could make that work. So a sort of progression in and ease back in, and a sort of slow build up, which hugely helped, you know, for my own sort of mental health, my confidence, my well-being coming back into the workplace. Those were all major factors.
Yeah, I totally see that. And Claudiu, is it the same for you?
I mean, my experience was, you know, I've taken the additional 10 weeks with some additional leave. So for me, I was only out for 3 months. I would say the main thing coming back, I was very eager to start things off. I came back with, you know, a lot of energy, with ideas when you take an extended period of time. And yeah, for me was, I wanted to get straight back into work. I think the nice thing was that the team was like, well, if you want to take a couple of weeks to just sort of ease in, you can. But I just decided to come in and use all the energy I've gathered and ideas to start things
Yeah.
in
I
the.
remember when
But
we
I
had
know that my experience will be totally different to coming back as a mother that's after maternity leave. It's
yeah.
completely different.
I also remember when we had our initial call when you said that you were raring to go and to get back
Yeah.
in. It was almost as if the team was holding you back and saying, we know that you're coming back and we want to go gentle. And you're like, I just want to get back stuck in. And maybe that is because you didn't have the child and there's a difference between being a
Yeah.
the parent, the mum, but it's just it just was a realization how supportive they are by saying, actually, we
Yeah.
want you to do this slowly. We don't expect you to come back. We know that you're going to be tired and you've had a big adjustment and all of those
Yeah.
things. So it's pretty amazing. And just while we're talking to you as well, I know that you had a pretty different experience to your wife. And you said that you're happy to sort of share that because there were two sort of quite different experiences for both of you.
Yeah.
Do you want to just touch on that? Because I think it's quite interesting to show how a company does it well, and then how your wife had a less good experience, lesser experience
Yeah.
than.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll go into a lot of details, but what I would say
No.
is, yeah, there was definitely a big contrast between, the what I've seen happen at Shell and what I've seen happen at other companies. I think when my wife came back, I think she was expecting to come back in 5 days a week straight as soon as a sort
Yeah.
of maternity leave finished. There was not even a conversation around, do you want to have a phased return to work, which I assumed would be the case. And I was able to say, actually, Evelina, you can ask for this. I know they haven't offered it to you proactively, but why don't we ask the question of whether or not that's something that they can offer? Luckily, we put that through, and they've agreed to it. But what I would say is that there's always the coming back to the culture. Even though it was agreed, it was not the standard, and therefore it was seen more of a favor, and more of an adjustment or an exception to the rule, which makes you feel as an employee, I think, and I don't want to speak for my wife, but I think it made her feel more as if she's taking advantage of the company. But I
Yeah.
really think that mothers should have a sense of pride in the fact that they've just given birth to a child and they've taken time out of their career to really take care of this human being that contributes positively to the society. And a company should really understand how big of an impact bringing a child into the world and offering that support in the first year and the time that they've taken off to take care of the child together with their partner. And that's where I think the biggest opportunity for companies is to really make a shift in their thinking that people have to sort of follow this rigid 5 days a week in the office, that
Yeah.
they should all be standard and there should be no exceptions, because if you raise an exception for another person is going to ask. We are all different and we have ups and downs as we go through life. And sometimes, the priorities where work is will come, behind family. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's I think as far as I can share is that I've seen the sort of
The impact of good and the impact
impact that
of
those things have taken, even if you're still able to get the agreement and to find ways to make it work, having to fight for it is not fun.
no. Also, it's important to have this conversation. Obviously, you're a father, you've taken it, and you were encouraged to take it. But what would you say to other fathers? Because I feel like there's sometimes a stigma around taking paternity leave, and
Yeah.
that not enough men take it up, even if they have the opportunity to, if it's offered.
Yeah.
But you have. So, what would you say to other fathers who are thinking about this or feel concerned maybe about taking this leave?
I would say definitely take it, because
Yeah.
it's something that you can then have a positive contribution towards bringing up your baby, and it creates what I feel it got for me is like a really strong bond with my daughter that I wouldn't have otherwise had I not spent, those long days, and also much better appreciation for how much work my wife has been doing. So while she was on maternity leave and I was going to work, I didn't really understand what was going on and how much work she was doing day to day. And I think that that alone gives uh, gives so much value because yeah, I think work is important, but I think what's more important is your family.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's the whole piece around it not just being about you, the parent, father, developing the
yeah,
relationship with the child, but also as a unit, as a family unit,
yeah,
becoming parents and supporting your other half through this big transition.
yeah.
It's just such a profound difference to have two parents there because we're just one taking maternity leave and not having the other. There's not enough support for the mum. So
Yeah.
it's that whole piece, and
What
that's why it's just so important.
what I would think I would say is here is I do recognize because I do have a lot of friends who are men. Not a lot of them would have this opportunity. So most companies,
Exactly.
what I think offer are the 2 weeks paternity leave, and then there is nothing else. I think if anyone here on the call has that chance when they're thinking about extending maternity leave, I think looking at it together as a unit and looking at partner leave together, I think is really important because it's the unit and the sort of that really makes the biggest difference. So parental leave should really be seen as something that's grouped together, and I think men should definitely have less of a worry about taking time off than I think most might have at the moment.
100%. That stigma needs to be removed, and it needs to be about both parents. So, Natasha, what advice would you give to new parents trying to balance work and family life?
Wow, advice to people trying to balance. So, actually, I was having a conversation with one of our leaders about this the other day, just in the office, just nothing formal. She just sort of said to me, how are you doing? A few months back, how are you getting on? Um, she has two children who are sort of teenage years, and I said to her, I am struggling to find the balance. Now being full time, I've done my easing back in, two
Yeah.
kids in nursery. I'm struggling to find the balance. And she gave me some advice that has really sat with me. And she just said, just stop looking for it. Stop trying to find the perfect balance. It doesn't exist. You're striving for something that I don't think really exists. That there's time where it'll feel like you've got it and other times that you haven't. But in trying to sort of strive for this constant point of perfection, you're going to constantly feel like you're failing and that everybody else has got it and they haven't. So firstly, that's something that really sat with me, is that it might feel imbalanced sometimes, but other times it doesn't. The other thing for me, and you just touched on it there in talking about this family unit, is that has been really key at the times where I have been able to find balance. The coming back from my maternity leave, this time I took shared parental leave with my husband, and so I came back after 9 months, and then he had 3 months. It was unpaid from his company, but 3 months of shared parental leave, enabling me to come back when I did. A choice that we made as a family, so that yes, he could get all of the benefits of spending time home with the kids, but for me to be able to come back and just focus on work for those first 3 months, not having to worry about nursery and all of those things, could just come and focus on work. And what that has done for us now, he's now working again as well, is that it's just created a bit more sort of equity in our household, a bit more of a balance. I'm not primarily responsible for all of the wraparound childcare and all of those responsibilities and my full-time job in the same way that he's not. We have found a way to split it, both work flexibly to enable us both to try and find some balance where we can be focusing on our careers, still spend time with our kids, somehow find time to do other things, rarely. But so I think a lot of it has come down to us being able to split some of those things, to sort of create a sense of balance. But yeah, I'm like I say, I'm not sure we'll ever be perfectly there. I'm now starting to think that nobody really is. But
No, I think that we all strive for balance, that perfect word, but there is no ever optimal. It's a constant one's here, and
exactly,
it's keeping the balls in the air as working parents, and that's how
totally.
that's always how it will be, and not beating yourself up sometimes when work overtakes family, and then sometimes family is the pull and work has to, and that's why working for a company who understands and values family and life is so important, and why um, obviously you've both found a company to work for where you're valued and you can show up authentically and don't have to pretend that you're not parents, and manage your lives. Okay, well, I think that's been really insightful, and I really appreciate, and I know the people listening, you sharing your stories, and also I hope that this is inspiring other companies to really think about how they manage their own maternity, paternity, parental leave policies, but not just policies, how they live and breathe it, and make sure that they enable it. Because it's one thing having a policy, but it's the second, it's a whole nother story how you actually bring that to life and make sure that your people live your values. So if you could share a message, let's leave on this, with any employers who are watching and thinking about how to support parental leave meaningfully, what would your advice be, Claudiu?
I would say, just coming back to the first point I made around culture, where it comes from. It comes from senior leaders who have the choice of what policies to set and how they respond to parents. Those are the two things that make the biggest difference: the policies they set and how they respond. If you're in a position where you can make those choices, for your company, it can not only have an effect on the current workforce and current teams, it can create a culture that can snowball into what the company then becomes. If we have more and more companies that have got a similar culture to what Shell has, we'll have a much better society, and parents and the wider the society will benefit as a result. And it sounds like a very small thing, but if you're in a position to make this, you can have the compounding effect of those small decisions will be felt by many, many, many people, not just the people you first
It
touch.
changes the dynamic of family and,
Yeah,
parents being present, and, a policy can impact enormously.
yeah.
If it's, yeah, I agree, have massive impact. And Natasha?
Yeah, and I think be loud about those policies. Don't hide them in a process, especially when you're hiring people. So often I see companies talk about, they've got enhanced maternity leave. Well, what does that mean? That could mean an extra week of pay. Be really clear about what that means up front, because it's really important. It's really important to people making those decisions. And if you've got a good policy in place, and I would encourage everybody to have really good policies in place, then that is a massive benefit, and that could be a really important part of your employer brand and your proposition when you're looking to attract new people into your organisation. And then kind of living those values and having that come down through your culture, because people starting families, expanding families, living family life is a fact that you are going to have people like that in your organization. So removing barriers to enable them to perform at their best seems to me like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want the people in your organization to perform the best in their roles? And if that means, improving your policies around parental leave, maternity leave, enabling flexible working, in a way that works for people, because flexible working means different things to different people, enabling those policies, I think you're going to create a culture of high performance, of better performance, of trust, of loyalty, which all in all, there's human elements to that. That's a good thing to do, but there's also really positive business impact of that. You'll see a return. Your business will be more productive, and so I think looking at this as just a part of your business model and how you can get people to perform the best within your organisation. That's how I would see these policies and how they can be really effective.
I love that. That's a really strong ending. So I was going to ask you both, which I'm not going to. Do you think that, these policies, annual leave, help strengthen your connection to Shell? Obviously, in a massive way. And I think what you've just said is a really strong way to end this. Right, the impact is tremendous on the business, on the bottom line, on people, on loyalty, on retention, on talent attraction. There's so much positive that can come out of this one policy. So, for companies listening to this, please listen, please start looking at those policies, but not just put policies in place, enable them and be loud about them, role model them and support your people. And for anyone who's watching this, who's thinking about joining a company, who's maybe about to think about having children, obviously this is really important, think, because I didn't personally think about that aspect. I joined a company quite young and then got to a point, but I think having that in your mind and planning for that and thinking about there's so many family friendly companies, being mindful to ensure that you're supported during such an important time is critical. So I want to thank you both so much for sharing your stories, because they're both quite personal, talking about maternity and parental leave, maternity, and sharing your stories, thank you so much. So I'm really grateful for that. And I really hope that it's inspired anybody listening, as I said, either companies or individuals, to really take advantage of these types of policies, because they have tremendous impact. And you can see both Claudiu and Natasha have benefited, and obviously the company too, from these types of policies and enactment. So thank you so much. I hope that anyone listening enjoyed this, and thank you to Shell for setting this up, and we're looking forward to having more sessions in the future. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you both so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.